Leon Charney Report. And now, here is your host, Leon Charney.
We are filming, it's April 1 and April Fool's Day. Well, we're not going to fool you today. We have two very important people with us today. Rabbi Marc Schneier, who's just elected as the youngest president of the New York Board of Rabbis. And we will have Norman Rosenbaum, who's the brother of Yankel Rosenbaum, whose family just got a pretty strong verdict against Limerick Nelson, I believe. And I think Nelson can go away for about 19 and a half years. What's interesting about that case is, as you know, the state court dismissed it, and now he went to the federal court, and they took it upon themselves to get some justice for this family. And Paula Jones, as we've been saying all along on this show, don't convict the president or don't put any judgments against him until he has his day in court. And we were in a minority, and the Washington Press, which we know very well, which is a cathedral of characters, who's about 200 inside politicians, reporters over there who are convicting this man, and CNBC might go out of business now because they're doing all this chat line on it. In any case, we're happy for President Clinton, we're happy for the country that this matter is at least cleared up for a while. I'm sure there may be appeals here, but we'll see where it goes. Let's talk about something more important. Rabbi Schneier, Marc Schneier, we're going to call him Mark because we know him a long time and he won't be offended, has just come back from the Vatican, where the Catholic the heads of the Catholic, I guess the Pope has really said that they've done some wrong during the period of the Holocaust. Am I right, Mark?
Correct. I was there as a member of
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're the youngest in the history of the New York Board of Rabbis. How old was Stephen Wise?
That's what they tell me.
How old was he when he was elected? Stephen Wise, was he 43?
I think it was 43, yeah.
And who do you succeed?
Rabbi Alvin Cass, who is the...
Wasn't he a chaplain, too?
No, he is a chaplain.
He's
a police chaplain.
So this encompasses the conservative, reform, and the Orthodox?
And Reconstructionists.
And Reconstructionists.
Correct. And what's so unique about it, and I'm speaking as an Orthodox rabbi, that out of the 800 members, over 225 are Orthodox.
All right, you're an Orthodox rabbi. You're ordained at Yeshiva University. One of your leaders was Rabbi, or is Rabbi Lamb, Dr. Norman Lamb. As I've said on the show a few weeks ago, I was traveling to Israel for the World Zionist Conference or Congress, and we were both delegates, and Lamb was telling me that he had just been scorched by a rabbi in Philadelphia, an Orthodox rabbi, who said that Ram was a hater of Zion or a hater
Correct.
of Torah. Whatever.
No, it was a hater of God.
A hater of God.
Right.
What's your feeling about something like that?
Every obstacle is an opportunity. And I think it was...
Do you know the rabbi who made this comment?
I know who the rabbi is.
They say he's an exceptionally learned man.
Right. Well, within the ultra-Orthodox community, he is a leader. But within the modern centrist Orthodox community, Dr. Norman Lamb is our spiritual leader. And when I said it's an opportunity, I think it was an opportunity for Dr. Lamb to make it very, very clear as to what his position is in terms of the need to create a more modern, centrist, progressive Orthodox movement.
All right, we're hopefully we're patching up with the Catholics, and you'll fill us in. How tough was that?
It was quite a challenge. The other hat that I wear, I'm the chairman of the World Jewish Congress Commission on Intergroup Relations. So I was in the Vatican representing the World Jewish Congress. This was the 16th meeting of the International Catholic Jewish Liaison Committee. And the original purpose of the meeting was to discuss issues like ecology, environment, how do we teach about each other, how do we disseminate the message to the greater communities. But then 2 weeks ago, around March 20th, the Vatican released a historic document on their role during the Holocaust. And it was a document that was subject to great controversy.
Were you satisfied personally with it?
The document had many positive
Rabbi
elements.
Lau, the chief rabbi of Israel, was and a Holocaust survivor, was not that pleased with it. Am I correct?
Well, I think Rabbi Lau, after the first reading of the document, was very, very displeased. By the afternoon, he was, calming down a bit. And again, I think there are positive elements to the document, but there were some controversial issues within the document.
Did you encounter, when you negotiated or with the Vatican group, did you encounter any subliminal anti-Semitism from any of these people?
Just the opposite. I was overwhelmed by the openness, the frankness, the candor, the honesty, the directness of the discussion.
So you're totally satisfied that these people are in good faith?
Yeah, I think that neither side was afraid of the truth. We tackled some very controversial subjects. Probably our most significant accomplishment, Leon, was on Monday evening. The conference was from Monday through Thursday. Monday evening, Cardinal Cassidy, who heads up the Vatican's Commission for Relations with the Jews, and that commission actually wrote the document. When it came to the issue of opening up the archives, so Cardinal Cassidy said that issue is off the table. We simply cannot do that. We will not do that. All Holocaust-related documents have been published in 12 volumes. We cannot do it for internal reasons, for security reasons. And by Thursday, after our meeting with the Pope, the issue had been revisited, and they had called for further clarification and even possible access into the archives.
Where did you stay, by the way? In Rome or the
yes,
Vatican?
No, I stayed in Rome. Some of the delegates stayed in the Vatican.
Did you get any kosher food at the Vatican?
The entire conference was strictly kosher.
Really?
Kosher food, kosher wine, and of all the meetings that have been held since 1970, this was the first meeting to ever be held in the Vatican. What happened on Tuesday, and that was really the most, I would say, the highlight of the whole discussions, was when we began to discuss the document. So I made reference to a Father Pierre Blais, who is the church historian on the Holocaust period, and he's also a great defender of Pope Pius XII. Blais, the previous week, had said that he would not oppose the opening of the archives. To that, Cardinal Cassidy said, well, there's nothing to discuss because all documents are in the 12 volumes. And then Dr. Gerhard Riegner, who is the honorary vice president of the World Jewish Congress, said, well, I think these 12 volumes may be more subjective than objective, because the most important document that I personally relayed to the papal nuncio in Switzerland in March 1942, the document that was a memorandum that shared with the church the atrocities that were being perpetrated against the Jews, that document is not in the 12 volumes. And that's when Cardinal Cassidy said, well, then I think we should discuss establishing a bilateral commission of Catholic and Jewish theologians to study the 12 volumes, and then, if need be, if there are any further questions, we would go further for clarification.
All right, your personal opinion. Why in those days, in the 40s and 30s, why was there so much anti-Semitism?
Well, it was very much in fashion. It's very much in vogue, and I think it all ties into the state of Israel.
Really?
I think that the Jewish community, especially my generation, we take it for granted that we have this great protector as the state of Israel. I can't even imagine what it must have been like to be a Jew before 1948, because we know that if the chips are down, wherever we might be, that we have a homeland, we have a place to go. And not only has that impacted on the psyche of the Jew, but also on the psyche of the world Jewish community. I tell people that as much as Israel has taken the Jew out of the diaspora, it has taken the diaspora out of the Jew.
A lot of press following this when you're at the Vatican?
Yeah. Listen, it was a very, very significant step.
Was the Pope involved?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we met with the Pope on Thursday.
He was clear. He knew what was going on.
Yeah, he was very, very clear. He was very gracious. In fact, it was very funny that after he made his formal address to us, and then we all spoke with him. So Cardinal Cassidy turned to Pope John Paul and said, "This is Rabbi Marc Schneier, and Rabbi Schneier is being installed as president of the New York Board of Rabbis on Monday evening, and Cardinal O'Connor will be the guest speaker." So the Pope said, "Please convey my blessings to the Cardinal, to the Jewish community. So Monday night, when I introduced the Cardinal, I told the Cardinal, I'm sure this is the first blessing that you've ever received from the Pope that's being delivered under rabbinical supervision. So.
All right, we got to cut for a break on that anecdote, and we'll be right back with Rabbi Marc Schneier, who's a pretty busy guy. He's running around the world. He's going to bring a lot of people together, at least in the religious context within not only New York, but I suspect this guy's going to get worldwide attention. We'll be right back. We're back. We are talking with Rabbi Marc Schneier, who just recently, last Monday night, was installed as the president of the York Board of Rabbis. Talk about that for a minute, Mark. That's an important organization because it's reflective of the whole Jewish community in New York, which is the largest probably in the world, even outside of Israel.
It is the largest interdenominational rabbinic organization in the world. 800 rabbis, serving over 1.5 million congregants. And it's a prototype that needs to be taken to the national and the international arena.
How are you voted? A nominating committee?
Yeah, they have a nominating committee. They have an annual meeting.
And what is the agenda? Tell me. Now, you're in there as a president for how long?
For 2 years.
Do you have a plan, an agenda?
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to accomplish?
Yeah, my agenda is to take our formula national and also bring it to Israel. In terms of national, we have identified in 30 major cities in North America
Similar
but smaller prototypes, meaning rabbinic structures that encompass Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionists. On May 11th and 12th, and we're doing this in cooperation with the World Jewish Congress, we are inviting to New York the presidents of these boards of rabbis.
So you want to make an amalgam?
To begin a discussion of creating a North American boards of rabbis, a kind of federation to raise the interdenominational voice to the national arena. Since the demise of the Synagogue Council of America, the American Jewish community no longer has a cohesive religious voice. And we feel there's a tremendous need for this.
What's your feeling about what is going on within the Jewish world today between the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, and the middle of the roaders, and the conversion law, and the fact that the Reform and the Conservative are pretty upset about it here, but in Israel, as I said on the show many times, it's not really an issue. What's your position on that?
We were the first. Not only the first, we were the only interdenominational rabbinic body asked to testify before the N.Y.B.O.R Commission. And I led that delegation. I was elected president of the New York Board of Rabbis on Wednesday, January 21st.
All right, and Norman is the Minister of Finance in Israel, who's an Orthodox Jew, and he formed this committee in Israel. It was asked to put this committee together, so trying to work out all these problems and details. And you'd have to say he's a centrist. He's a man who wears a kippah, yarmulke all the time, but does not have a beard, which is not a negative in any way. But he's a centrist Orthodox Jew.
So we testified before the commission on Thursday, January 22nd. That was the final day of their deliberations. And our proposal was to establish a prototype of the New York Board of Rabbis in Israel, an interdenominational rabbinic forum where rabbis could simply communicate and dialogue with one another. I mean, we have been doing this successfully for over 117 years.
You think there's a role for religious parties in politics?
Do I think there's a role for religious
it's
parties
tough one,
in
Mark.
politics?
It's not so easy.
Yeah,
and you got 18 what? You got 18 rabbis. Your pedigree goes back 18
generations.
18 generations of rabbis. So you can tackle that question.
Sure. And now that we spoke about 18 generations, I came up with my response to your very tricky question. I think that religion has a role in politics as long as they don't politicize the religion. I think if they do things in a genuine way, and if they do things in a more spiritual way. The danger is when religion becomes political.
I asked Dr. Borg, who was the oldest Knesset cabinet member in the history of Israel.
Dr. Joseph Borg.
Joseph Borg, I asked him the question. I said, the NRP, National Religious Party, would make a compromise and say, okay, if you do this in Jerusalem, there'll be no buses, but we'll let you have buses in Haifa running
Right.
on Saturday or
Right.
Sabbath. And how do you bring the two together?
Well, that is why what is sorely needed is for the modern Orthodox community to go on the offensive, a community that is inclusive, a community that is tolerant, a community that understands that the overriding principle for Jewish survival is love of all Jews. And what I believe that's taking place in Israel right now is you're beginning to see more modern, centrist, progressive Orthodox rabbis, take a stand and say that, yes, there are issues that transcend our religious and theological differences, and let's look for ways for rabbis to communicate and to work together.
I interviewed Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown is the advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu on, not the ball player, on, there was a ball player called Bobby Brown.
I saw he played for the Yankees.
I think he played for the Browns. I don't know,
No,
St. Louis?
No, he also played for the Yankees.
All right, I got to bring Marty Glickman and he'll help me. I asked him, if the Orthodox, the rightist part of the country would accept the N.Y.B.O.R Commission's findings. And he said it's difficult. What he was talking about is at least they're making progress. You have people sitting down and talking together.
I think it's unfair to expect the ultra-right to accept it. It's not their belief system, it's just not their theology. I think what needs to happen is that in Israel today, the perception is that Orthodox Judaism is monolithic. It's not. You have different degrees within Orthodoxy. You have your Hasidic community, you have your ultra-Orthodox community, you have your Aguda, you have your Mizrahi, you have your centrist, you have your modern.
You have the Lubavitcher?
You have Lubavitch. So you have, different degrees here. And I think that what needs to be done is that the modern Orthodox community must assert itself. I mean, that was the greatness of Mizrahi. That was the greatness. Today,
Right.
Mizrahi has gone more to the
What is
right.
the ultra-Orthodox organization for the rabbis in New York City? Agudas HaRabbanim?
Correct.
Are they part of the New York Board of Rabbis?
No. Well, let me qualify that. The New York Board of Rabbis we have from Reform to Hasidic members under one umbrella. There are Orthodox rabbis that very much embrace and welcome the formula and the structure of the New York Board of Rabbis. There are Orthodox rabbis that consider the height of blasphemy. But again, people are entitled to their beliefs. All I ask as a modern Orthodox rabbi is not to delegitimize my position and my belief.
And you want civility.
Correct.
You don't want Rabbi Lamb castigated like he was by this rabbi in Philadelphia.
Correct. Meaning you can disagree with someone, but you have to do so in a concordant and in a dignified
Sitting
manner.
in your chair last week, although nobody can sit in your chair anymore, Mark, it's going to be special, was Chich Lahat, the former mayor of Tel Aviv.
Who I saw Madison Avenue.
Who's
Yeah.
well, every Israeli has to go shopping.
Right.
He said that, and he was very proud of the fact that he had given a piece of land in Tel Aviv to the first Reform congregation of Tel Aviv. And he says, look, the Orthodox can be Orthodox and Reform, but let's everybody be civil to one another.
Correct.
That's what
Right.
you're saying.
Right. And if you believe in your product, which I do, as you know, I went out to the Hamptons. I built an Orthodox synagogue. People laughed at me. They said, Orthodoxy in the Hamptons? I mean, impossible.
Can you wear shorts in your shul?
It's under rabbinical supervision, so it's no problem, right? But at the Hampton Synagogue, you cannot physically stand there on a Saturday morning.
Crowded.
It's so crowded.
A lot of singles?
For you, it would be a candy store out there. It'd be an absolute candy store.
I got married. I'm in trouble, but my
Yeah.
producer, he might have a good time with
Yes.
it.
No,
you know?
we had a little talk about that before.
Well, I think you did a great job in West
Right,
Hampton. There's a great need for it.
But the point I'm making, there's a Reform Temple out there. There are two conservative congregations out there. And competition is healthy. It only makes the product better. And if you really champion, if you feel that your product is the winning product, which I believe as an Orthodox rabbi, then why am I afraid of competition? It's only going to make the product better.
Well, we're going to hold for a break. The reason is that the ultra-Orthodox take a literal meaning of the Torah, and they think if you don't follow their literal meaning of the Torah, then you're not part of the group or
Correct.
part of the gang. We'll be back, and we'll continue with Rabbi Marc Schneier, and then we'll have Norman Rosenbaum on, who, as I said before, his family has won an enormous victory in the federal courts. We'll be right back. Continuing a very interesting conversation with Rabbi Marc Schneier, who is the youngest president to be elected as the head of the New York Board of Rabbis. How old is that organization, by the way?
117 years.
Really? Why was it started?
Why? Because there were 3 Orthodox and 3 Reform rabbis in New York who had the vision to understand that there are issues where we can come together and we can find common purpose and common ground.
Who was the first rabbi who was head of it?
I think the then spiritual leader of Spanish Portuguese synagogue.
Really?
Yeah, which would be appropriate. A historic organization would have the rabbi of the historic synagogue.
I don't want to let go. 18 generations of rabbis. Give me the history a little bit.
Well, first you have my Lubavitch connections. I mean, my grandfather changed our name from Schneerson to Schneier. So
You're a Schneier son?
Yeah. In fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe would always remind me that I have the original name. I mean, the original name is Schneer. And the Rebbe would always say to me, I'm only the son of Schneer. You
Really?
have the original name. And I remember 6 or 7 years ago when we had a family reunion in Crown Heights.
Schneerson, by the way, Rabbi Schneerson was the rabbi of the Lubavitcher Hasidic movement. In this case, we have a lot of non-Jews who watch us.
And about 6 or 7 years ago, we had a big family reunion, and it was my cousin, Rabbi Groner, from Australia, and myself. We spoke on behalf of the family.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm very proud of that.
So you're blood related to Rabbi Schneerson?
Of course, sure. There's an actual group within the Lubavitch sects that are known as the descendants of the Alter Rebbe, of the original Rebbe, and I'm one of them.
Wow.
Then I also
Could you
have...
be elected head of the Lubavitcher community also?
Don't start rumors. Don't start rumors. I mean,
It's a scoop.
It might get some of my friends too
Paula
nervous.
Jones scoop means nothing tonight.
Yeah.
Marc Schneier may become the new Lubavitcher Rebbe. Not so fast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have done a lot of work, by the way, with the black community.
Correct.
Tell us about it.
In 1989, I established with the late Joseph Papp the Foundation for
Broadway
Ethnic...
producer?
Correct. The Foundation for Ethnic Understanding. And the foundation today has really become not only the New York, but the national address for black-Jewish relations in terms of promoting better relations between the two communities. And I think what we have demonstrated, outside of some controversial issues, be it the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, the Crown Heights affair, that the defining element in the state of black-Jewish relations in this country today is cooperation and not conflict.
And how successful was it?
We've been very, very successful. I think we have been the forefront of promoting the centrist dialogue in black-Jewish relations. I believe that since the heyday of the civil rights era, that the Jewish community has not enjoyed the friendships that it has with the leaders of the preeminent civil rights organizations. You look at Hugh Price of the National Urban League. You look at Kwaisim Fume and Julian Bond of the NAACP. You look at Coretta Scott King, Dexter King. I'm having the Second National Conference on Black-Jewish Relations, which we present at Yeshiva University.
Really?
On April 28th, and this year the keynote speaker is Martin Luther King III, who is the new president of the SCLC, the Southern Christian.
Like the Schneersons, they keep going,
Exactly, in terms of, it's a generational thing.
Generational.
So I believe that we have some wonderful, wonderful opportunities, and we need to keep promoting the centrist voice. The centrist voice in terms of
well,
the
I'm going to give you
community.
something that you probably don't know. I'm a graduate of Yeshiva University also.
I do know that, because
And-
Yeshiva is very proud of that.
We get a couple of solicitation cards from
I'm
them
sure.
all the time.
I'm sure. Here, I have a few in my pocket, right?
In any case, what I remember my school days is that many of us walked on to picket Woolworth to make sure that blacks were given equal rights, and we were heading picketing lines for the benefit of the black people. And this was, the middle 60s.
I just completed the manuscript for a book that I'm writing. I've spent 2 years researching on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his relationship with the Jewish community. No one has ever documented Dr. King's involvement with Israel, with the Soviet Jewry movement, with his total disdain and disgust for anti-Semitism within the African American community, his relationship with the Atlanta Jewish community, with Southern rabbis, with national Jewish organizations.
All right, that's interesting. When I was working with Jimmy Carter, there was a problem with a fellow named McHenry, who was a ambassador at the United Nations, who replaced
Young. Andy Young.
Andy Young.
Right.
You show any research on McHenry at all?
No.
Have you done anything on him?
No, because again,
there were feelings that he was anti-Jewish at that time.
My focus is specifically on Dr. King, and I think when your typical conversation between blacks and Jews on the civil rights era is always look at what Jews did for the African American community. I think it's also important to know what the head of the civil rights movement did for the Jewish community in terms of his support for Israel, his involvement in Soviet Jewry, and he really championed Jewish rights and Jewish causes. And I think it's important to set the record straight and to have have it documented and recorded.
You know, I asked you before whether there was any anti-Semitism blatant at the Vatican. You said absolutely not. You're around town a lot. Jews are skeptical people by nature.
Well, we have a right to be.
Right, all right. So if we do a peace treaty, the first question is, can you trust an Arab?
Right.
Jews who talk to you after you did the document with the Vatican, are they skeptical? Do they feel that?
No, I think they were very, very positive. Again, there were some issues in the document that
any criticism from any groups at all about this document?
Listen, many people criticized. My comments were that.
No, you personally. I mean, do people try to come at you and say, "Don't believe in this document"?
No, because I think we were very clear that it's only so that we're advanced. I think the dialogue has advanced. I mean, if you think under Pope John Paul, you have a pope that established relations with the state of Israel, removed the nuns from the convent in Auschwitz, went to visit the synagogue in 1986, comes out with this document, and the document is also important from a historical point of view, because to those revisionists who would like to rewrite history and say the Holocaust never took place, here you have the church coming out with a document saying that the Shoah indeed took place, and we need to take note.
All right, I know you're in a rush. You got to run out of here. You got 100 dinners to go to. Two simple questions. Yitzhak Greenberg was on this show he's a centrist Orthodox rabbi. His prediction was that there would be a woman Orthodox rabbi within the next 10 years in that community. What do you think?
I happen to agree. I don't think it would be a women rabbi in the classical sense, because there are certain limitations in terms of the role of the woman within the synagogue. But yes, I can see like kind of quasi. And
what's your feeling? There's a big movement amongst Orthodox Jewish women to have more voice in its study of Talmud.
Yeah. Again, I think it comes back to the point that I was making, that the modern Orthodox community is now asserting itself. It is becoming proactive, and we need to support it.
Mark,
it's a pleasure.
Good luck to you.
Pleasure, and I hope I'll see you at the dinner later.
We'll be back in a moment to bring on a fascinating man. Unfortunately, we've known about him through tragedy, but he's astute and he's brilliant. He's a lawyer. He may even be a rabbi, I'm not sure, but his name is Norman Rosenbaum. He's been in the news. We'll be right back. We're back. We have the pleasure of introducing to our audience for the first time Norman Rosenbaum. Obviously, you've seen him in the news all over the United States, probably the world. It's probably a world-famous case right now. And Norman and his family prevailed in terms of getting a conviction against Limerick Nelson, who is charged with allegedly killing Yankel Rosenbaum in the streets of Crown Heights. Norman, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I wish it could be on different circumstances, but then again, you've done some remarkable work. I saw your mother on television today. Is this the first time she was in the United States?
No, she's been here a couple of times previously, but this is the first time she's been here in relation to the case, and only the second time since my brother's murder.
By the way, have you settled the case officially with New York City?
No, that's going forward, I suppose, as we speak. I'm not privy to all the aspects of the case, mainly because, contrary to the newspaper reports, my family isn't a plaintiff. It's the estate of my late brother. So, and each is a class action. So there's an element of confidentiality from one plaintiff to the other plaintiff. But we're looking to go forward. Certainly Mayor Giuliani has recognised the strength of what our case is, and I think he's acknowledged the importance of accepting what the evidence has been, the evidence which has been brought out in depositions, which has been horrific on the one hand and devastating on the other. It's really set the picture very, very clearly of what occurred during those 4 days of rioting in 1991.
But you know what I saw in your mother's face? I saw soul, neshama. Even when she saw this fella being convicted, there was a sense of humanity in your mother. Now, I never met your mother. This is only my sense of what I saw on the screen for maybe 2 minutes, you know? She felt it was like a Jewish neshama there, even worrying about another human being. Am I right or wrong?
My mother's a very caring person. It was interesting. Up until yesterday, when people would ask her, what do you think about the death sentence, capital punishment? My mother was very outspoken in favour of it. And then yesterday somebody said to her, do you think Lemrick Nelson should ever be released from prison? And there seemed to be no doubt he'd be going to prison. It was a question of how long. And for the first time she actually said, well, if he was rehabilitated, we saw a genuine change in the person and he could make a contribution to society, which I suppose a lot of things which are said in the heat of the moment, not necessarily which you regret later, but which you want to temper later. My mother's a very reasonable person.
I just saw this in 2 minutes.
And, you know, it's one of these things which, as I said, I don't think next to my father there's anybody closer to my mother. And yet, these are the things which came through yesterday. Certainly, she got no joy out of seeing Lemrick Nelson being in prison. And somebody said to her yesterday, are you happy? She goes, I'm not happy.
How can you be happy incarcerating another human being?
You know, and that's not to say that she
You weren't looking for vengeance.
No, not at all. And that's probably the most important thing. This case has been all about justice and nothing about revenge.
What did Mayor Dinkins say? He's been pretty upset about this, huh?
Well, Mayor Dinkins, unfortunately, is a man who, I suppose a lot of people say, lost his way while he was in office, and he hasn't gone much further since then. Last week, when the news broke that there were settlement negotiations had been initiated by the city in regard to the civil rights suit, he took great offence. He said that the city was kowtowing to a small but significant community in Crown Heights, and he completely misrepresented what had transpired in the case. He's obviously a very bitter man who refuses to accept responsibility for those 4 days of rioting. Our response has been very simple. We initiated with the other victims the class action. It was done at a time when there was no federal investigation. A federal investigation was crying out to be done. We needed the power to bring people to give sworn testimony. We needed the powers of discovery to gather evidence. We couldn't do it any other way. If the Justice Department wasn't going to do it and the DA's office wasn't going to do it, we were going to do it within the parameters of the law. And that's what we did. Even Richard Ugenti, who the former Director of Criminal Justice in the state of New York, who the state
Mario Cuomo.
That's right. Even he didn't have the powers to compel people to give testimony, sworn testimony, or couldn't prosecute, all these things. Yet we were able to do that, and we unearthed vital information which we see as being paramount to ensuring this never ever happens again. Irrespective of who the perpetrators are, irrespective of who the victims are, irrespective of who's in office, the law must be enforced to protect law-abiding citizens.
You know, I must say another thing, and we've had Mayor Dinkins on the show a few times, many times. I know him well. He's not an anti-Semitic person. He's been a pro-Israel person. He's done a lot of good things for Jewish people. Could it be that he just got facts transmitted to him in the wrong way?
That's a possibility. I can't say that I have been able to identify exactly how it went wrong.
Right. That's what I'm curious about.
It's interesting when one takes a look at the statement he prepared for Richard Ugenti, and it was a voluntary statement. He wrote it up. He didn't have to give oral testimony. He wasn't open to cross-examination, and he did it by way of cooperation. I've got to emphasise that. He didn't shirk the responsibility or turn away from the opportunity. If you take a look at that statement and compare it to his sworn deposition, there are significant contradictions between the two documents, and they're alarming contradictions, inconsistencies, matters which are raised in one which are ignored in the other, and vice versa. And it only raises, I suppose, the interest into how did this occur. Certainly we know that he knew about what was going on, and we know that he knew from an early point of time. The difficulty which everybody has is that you've got a fully fledged race riot on your hands. It appears, for whatever reason, they didn't resort to the full powers of the law which they had at their disposal. Now, what they knew they were risking was the safety of the Jewish community of Crown Heights.
So at worst, he's guilty of negligence.
Well, I suppose it's probably one step higher, because there appears definitely to be evidence of him acknowledging the danger which his policy or his approach to the problems were, which put the Jewish community of Crown Heights in physical danger. Now, if you're favouring one group over another, you've got the classic civil rights scenario. And that's really our greater concern. Now, whether it was, he's often said, the buck stops with me. And I think that's right. Whether he was the person who developed the policy or whether he was the person who the policy was served up to and he endorsed it, when you look at the videotapes of the press conferences held at the time, there just seems to be the classic political sidestep. They were serving up to the people of New York, I suppose, what they wanted to hear. That they didn't want to hear they had a race riot. They wanted to hear that there was some violence there which was being put down in an appropriate, constructive manner.
All right, we're going to cut for a break. It's very important what you said, because, you know, I know Mayor Dinkins very well. He's a very reasonable man, and he's a human man, a human being. And anybody in this world can be subjected to negligence or bad information, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, I think the important fact is that there has been justice, and it's been served through the federal courts.
Well, unfortunately, I think David Dinkins' worst enemy is David Dinkins.
All right, we'll cut. We'll come right back, and we'll talk to Norman Rosenbaum, who does other things in his life except try federal cases here. He didn't try this case, but I'm sure he watched over it very carefully. We're back. We're talking to Norman Rosenbaum, who is a leading barrister in Australia and has spent a lot of his time in the United States trying to seek justice for the death of his brother, Yankel Rosenbaum. By the way, is this a story that's international? People know
Yes, I never cease to be surprised by the people who pick it up and where they pick it up. I have colleagues who were attending a conference in Dublin, Ireland, some time ago, and they were at the hotel having breakfast, and CNN came on. There had been a development in the case, and there they saw my face greeting them as they ate their cornflakes in the morning.
Has CNN followed the story all the way?
CNN, there's a lot of interest in England and Europe, naturally in Israel, and as far across people, Hong Kong. I do a lot of work in Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore.
So you're overwhelmed by people who want to interview you, I suppose.
Well, for one reason or other, either it's in relation to my late brother's case. I do a lot of work on the Swiss bank, the retrieval of assets for people in Australia.
You said something interesting to me, and I'd like you to give that to my audience. You said that David Dinkins is a very complicated man, and you gave me a rundown of his life, and it's very interesting.
Well,
he opposed Farrakhan, right?
Not only did he oppose Farrakhan, he came out publicly in opposition to many other members of the black community who decided to take a step back or to be conveniently absent. He went to the forefront. As in terms of the support for the State of Israel, I don't think
I was there with him. I went to Israel with him during the Scuds of Israel.
I mean,
nobody's been more staunch.
I was going to say, I'm the last person who has to tell you about it. He's a person who I don't think there's an organisation, a cause in terms of the Jewish community, which he has not had either an active or a passive role in endorsing, encouraging, providing for, etc.
Right.
Yet when it came to Crown Heights, he was a coal-faced crossroad he was faced with, and he blew it. And as I made the comment just before the break, he seems to be his own worst enemy. It's ironic because I don't believe that he's a blatant racist or anti-Semite or anything like that, because I don't believe his inherent record. I mean, the aspect of his character where you get the natural reaction from David Dinkins, not the press release effort, would allow you to include anywhere near that. However, in regard to Crown Heights, it's almost a combination of denial, refusal to accept, and it's even that stands in stark contrast to other aspects of his public life, where often where he's been wrong, he's been very quick to apologise, take responsibility. This is the one aspect he has just backpedaled and...
It's an enigma. We no one can understand it, and I don't know if anybody will. It's a tough enigma to try and to depuzzle, if there's such a word. I don't know if you can do it. What's the reaction? You have very good response and reactions with a lot of black people, don't you?
Yes, well, this is the interesting part of this whole case. A lot of people try and paint it as black versus Jew.
It's not.
And not at all, and I think a lot of people have profited out of that approach. When I first visited the scene of the attack on Yankel, one of the African American residents from Crown Heights, from the integrated neighbourhood, had been there for 40 years, came down to me. She expressed her condolences and she implored me to please forget about the colour of the skin of the attackers of my brother. She said she saw the attack. She goes, from a distance, and her eyesight couldn't identify anybody, regretfully. She goes, but she herself knows that those people who attacked my brother one day could easily attack her or her children or her grandchildren next. And first and foremost, they're criminals. They're murderers. They're people who are hell-bent on violence, and forget about the colour of their skin. And she said it in a way not denying the circumstances of the attack, that they were screaming out to kill the Jew, but she wanted to impress upon me that this is not a statement from the African American community. This is not the values of African Americans, irrespective of their place in society, and particularly not part of the philosophy of those who live in Crown Heights.
And I think the relationship between Hasidic and black people in Crown Heights is much improved now, isn't it?
Well, I think that what this really did was to force them to become very public about the work they do together.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to suggest to you that within the integrated neighbourhood of Crown Heights there aren't the usual neighbourhood disputes and problems and challenges.
Happens in Australia too.
Can I tell you, it really does. But what you will find, the successes, the advancements, the accomplishments don't make good, or it is good news, but just don't make the media.
Good news never makes the media.
And that's very unfortunate, because they're very, very fine people. And had I not had that broad-based encouragement to go forward, I don't think I would have been as confident to go forward. We would have gone forward, but when you've got people from all different walks of life, all colours, creeds, nationalities, saying, listen, we're with you, and not behind me, but standing with me side by side, who've taken the time to send cards and letters to my parents, who start with, I'm a member of the African American community, please accept my condolences. That type, feeling that not only do they have to justify who they are, but they want to send a message, and that message is imperative.
It might be good for you to put a book together and show it to the press. It might help a lot, you know?
Well, there's a lot of things which we've been very tempted to do, which in the future I would look to doing. One of the things I've been very careful about, I didn't want anybody to ever misunderstand our motivations. So books and films and things like that, we always declined very politely.
But I understand that if there's a recovery of money from the estate, it all goes to the community. Your family
I'm not privy to exactly how any money would be divided. The reality is that the estate is the plaintiff, not the family. The brother gets nothing. The parent. It's not a matter of my parents are the plaintiffs.
Was your brother married?
No, he wasn't.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
You have children?
Yes, four wonderful children.
And I brought your new cousin. You didn't know you related to Rabbi Schneier.
Well, as he spoke before, that my mother is also a descendant of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, and yes, we're cousins. Indeed, the Rabbi Groner he spoke of from Australia, who he spoke with at the meeting of the descendants, is indeed my mother's cousin, from the branch of the family called the Mishpachat Slonim from Israel.
The family of Slonim. Did the Lubavitcher Rebbe know about your case before?
Sure, yes.
What was his feelings?
I went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe on 2 occasions after I arrived here in November of 1991. On the first occasion, it was very late in the day, and as you will recall, the Rebbe used to receive people on a Sunday and give them blessings and hand out dollars for charity. And we went there, he gave us a bracha. The second week, a blessing. And the second week we went there, and my wife was about to go back to Australia, and she was pregnant with what is now our young daughter, and he spoke with her at some length. And then when I had written to him to explain why I was here and what I was doing, and he made a comment in response that I should conduct it in a way which is dignified as a Kiddush Hashem, as in a sanctification of God, in a way which gives credibility and integrity to the issues, that I should take it to its logical conclusion, or to, as he said in his words, wherever it takes me. And that gave me a great deal of encouragement. I don't condone violence, I don't advocate violence. Here we wanted to make the system work, and that was what it was all about.
Very prophetic. We got a cut for a break. We'll come right back and continue our conversation with Norman Rosenbaum, who does a lot of other things in life, and we'll talk to him about the Swiss problem of monetary funds, shall we say. We've been on that case for about 1.5 years, so we'll get Norman's idea of what's happening. We'll be right back. We're back. We're speaking with Norman Rosenbaum. He's a barrister. You know, under the English system, which Australia is still a part of, although they want to get out of the problem. They want to get rid of the king and the queen. In any case, you have a system where you have a solicitor and a barrister. And the barristers are the ones that go to court, and the solicitors do the business. And basically, the higher level is the barrister, and a little bit lower is the solicitor. And then you get the QCs, the Queen's Counsel. Still have that in Australia?
We still have that. I'm not quite there yet, but I do wear a wig and gown when I go to court.
You do?
Yes.
And a tie? You don't need one.
No, actually, I don't like wearing ties, but we have what they call a jabot, which is like a bib, if you've ever seen the old English attire. So that's what you see me arguing.
With the bow, big bow.
Big bow.
Yeah, aside, I talked to somebody from Australia the other day who said that the country is about 50-50 on wanting to get rid of the British monarchy there. There's a little bit of a fight over that.
It's a big step, and I'm not sure whether everybody understands the step, because what it involves is not only you getting rid of the monarchy as the Queen of England as our head of state officially, but it also involves a constitutional rewrite.
Oh boy.
And
that's tough.
It is tough because a lot of our constitution, ironically, is based on the US Constitution, because as you know, England doesn't have a constitution.
That's right. Magna Carta.
Magna Carta. But, and I think we've grown up enough. While we're looking to get rid of the Queen, we're not looking to get rid of Seinfeld, so I think that's an indication of where we're headed. And I think...
You watch Seinfeld in Australia?
I never get time to watch anything.
Do you have a TV in your home?
Yes, I do have a TV in my home.
That's modern.
Well, it's only modern up to a point. My wife doesn't allow my kids to watch it, and that means nobody gets to watch it, including me. And I'm an avid sports fan. And I'm not allowed to watch it. I'm told that we're allowed to watch it for half an hour on Sundays, and if I'm not there for that half hour, I miss out.
But that's a house rule.
That's a house rule, and my wife enforces it. And there's no higher court which can be appealed to.
All right, Norman, tell us what your relationship is to the Swiss problem with the compensation to Holocaust victims.
In 1996, at the time Charles Price was indicted as the second person in regard to the murder of Yankel, I got a lot of calls in Australia from people who had claims or tried to make claims against Swiss banks. They had that was about the same time as
Are your parents, by the way, survivors of the Holocaust?
No, my parents were both born in Australia.
In Australia? And they're both Hasidic?
They both have strong Hasidic backgrounds.
Because I noticed your father, in the picture, he didn't have a beard, am I correct?
No, he does have a beard. It's just very, very grey.
Oh.
My father actually, I'm a bit of a chont, as we say, a mix of everything. Because my father, we have Hasidim, and my father is very, very proud of being a descendant of the Vilna Goyen.
Oh boy, it's the other side of the tracks.
This is like the Catholics and the Protestants.
Wow, how do I explain that one? The Vilna Goyen is like being on the other side of the track. The Vilna Goyen is a very intellectual personality in Judaism when he lived, and Gaon means genius or ultra genius, and because of him, many people felt that they couldn't worship God, and I'm making it very simplistic. So there was a fellow by the name of the Baal Shem Tov who said you can worship God through joy and dance and play and singing, and gave a lot of people who felt that they were external to that Judaism a chance to be part of Judaism. That's synopsis, right?
Exactly. So we're a good mix, as we say. At about that time when Price was charged, the Swiss banks whole issue came out. It came out in Australia because Australia has the largest per capita population of Holocaust survivors outside of the state of Israel. So it is big news there, and it's very important. I received a lot of phone calls from survivors who had attempted to make claims, recognising that Senator D'Amato had played a role in my case, asking me to pass on just their appreciation. And it evolved from that because nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
Having said that, what we looked towards was establishing formal links with Senator D'Amato so he would represent people in Australia.
Oh, is that really?
And that's what we managed to do.
So you're sort of counsel to those people.
That's right.
Senator D'Amato.
We now have the Australian Asia Pacific.
Called the Italian Connection, by the way.
You bet you're right. The Australian Asia Pacific Jewish Restitution Committee. We work with D'Amato's office, with the Holocaust Processing Claims Office here, and we hope to advance it.
Norman, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
We wish you a lot of luck, and we hope to see you on better occasions.
Look forward to it.
We'll see you next week. I don't know if we can match this week, but maybe we'll get Paula Jones.